One of the biggest challenges for a small business owner, second gen owner to get over the hump is assembling the right leadership team. There's power in people. And one of the biggest factors in the struggle, what causes the struggle, often is time where the demands and requirements of the business outgrow the experience of the leaders you have. So how do you know when it's the right time to upgrade your leadership team, or how can you tell if your leadership team is the team you need to take you to the next level? We're going to talk about it today. Welcome to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast, where we cover the issues that help owners scale their small business. I'm Corey Harlock, creator of KeyHire Solutions, and I'll be your host today. Our guest today is Neil Katz. He's the CEO and founder of Exceptional HR Solutions, where they optimize your processes and provide hands-on support to conquer any HR challenge to fuel your growth. They've been working with small businesses for 5 years in all aspects of HR. Their goal is to have leaders get back to what they love. I always say people don't start businesses so they can hire people and do HR. That's kind of a unintended consequence of starting a business. And they're dedicated to learning the business of the people they serve, which is always and one of the successes of KeyHire, but certainly really, really important. So Matt, let's bring Neil on. Neil, how you doing, sir?
Corey, I'm doing great. Good to see you. How's your day going?
So far, so good. Good to connect again here. Where are you sitting? Where I think I've asked you this before, but I forgot.
That's all right. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Oh, you are?
Enjoying the beautiful 70-degree day today.
Isn't it beautiful out there? I went for a little walk at lunch. Man, we don't get many. I wish I was golfing again, because it would be a wonderful day to be out on the golf course. But
well, Corey, you know what? Sometimes we get to golf and sometimes we get to do podcasts.
I was going to say, second best thing is to be here with you doing a podcast.
There you go.
Awesome. So today we're talking about how to assess your leadership team and see if they're the right crew for you. We always like to kind of start with some definitions. So, in your world and the way you do it, walk us through kind of some of the terminology or some of the things that surround constraints, talent gaps, experience, capacity, all that fun stuff. What does it look like in your world?
Corey, I think what we have to look at is we have leaders at all levels of companies. And as you start a company, it's usually yourself and then maybe a partner, a co-founder, somebody like that. And then you scale into another manager, director, VP, executive, C-suite. We have all these fun titles and acronyms and 3 and 4 letter abbreviations for what people do. And what we've realized over the years is the adage I use is what got you here won't get you there. And generally speaking, that's the saying I go with when it comes to leadership is not that none will. The vast majority, if you look, when you have 5, 10 employees, that same leader in many cases does not have the capability and skills or background to get you to 100 employees or 1,000 employees, or from $1 million in revenue to 50 million.
Right.
It's a different demand and challenges that we see. And that's really the conversation for today is how do you know when you have the right leaders and how do you know when you need to make changes?
Yeah. And that's the big question, because what you alluded to, a couple points on it, oftentimes those leaders, the busiest business they've ever worked in is the business they're working in today.
Exactly.
The busiest business they'll ever work in is your business tomorrow as it grows. And if they don't have the experience or the capacity to create the process and procedure and lead the people, you can't run a $30 million a year business on a $2 million process, right? And if that's all you know and that's all you can do, it's not an indictment on the individual. Because when you start your small business, you hire your neighbor, you hire your neighbor's cousin, right? And away we go, and everyone does the best job they can. But eventually the business outgrows the experience. And it's a crappy place to be as an entrepreneur, because these are the people that gave you everything they had to help make you a success. And that realization that, I don't know if I can continue to have you be in the role you're in, because I don't think you can as you alluded to, you can't get me where I want to go, right? Thank you for getting me here, but I don't know if you can get me there. And that's brutal. That's a brutal place to be for an entrepreneur.
It's a hardening, difficult reality to face. And the analogy that was given to me in another podcast I had heard listening to was every time a company 3X's its growth, they're going to revolution and evolution the entire org.
Right.
People, structures, processes, and systems.
Yep.
And the reality is some people, a very limited few, can scale through a few of those growths, but most cannot. The hardest decision for an entrepreneur is, when do I make the change? How do I recognize that team isn't the right? The other caution I caution leaders to consider is be very cautious to over title or over promote talent that truly isn't at the level you want them to be. I can't tell you how many SVPs of XYZ company org role, if you really took that role and assessed and evaluated, they maybe were a director or senior director at most. And again, nothing against the individual, but sometimes as we grow and scale, we want to reward those folks, but they really aren't at that level we need them to be.
Oh, 100. I agree with that 100%. I mean, you have a $20 million company and they have a CEO and a bunch of VPs, and you're like, you guys should have managers. There's no such thing as a VP in a $20 million a year company. I call those overvalued assets. If you look at operations, you had a person that worked the machine that showed up on time every day and was reliable. And then you notice they were training people, so you promote them up, and then they seem to be kind of responsible, so we make them a supervisor. Next thing you know, they're your director of operations, and they've never had any formal training, and you're paying them X.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were to go out on the market and get another job, they would be X minus 30%.
Correct.
Right? But you're paying them top dollar because, and it's not wrong, it's just convenience, right? They show up. I can trust them to do what needs to be done. But then when the revenue outgrows the capabilities out of an individual, now you're paying this person and they're not getting stuff done. And that's where the wheels start to fall off the machine a little bit.
And we see that a lot of organizations that you get to a certain point and it's a skill gap. And you said it earlier, it's not a bad thing or a testament of the individual. When companies grow and scale, we hire our network. We refer to the people we know, as you said, our friends, our family, people we've worked with in other organizations, other companies, places we've connected with folks. That doesn't mean they're the right skill. And at some point you have to recognize you need to hire and or buy that skill in the open market and find that right talent that truly will get you where you are, but more importantly, where you're trying to go. And that
Neil,
growth trajectory is hard.
Neil, I love the fact that you said buy the talent on the open market, because there's ROI on talent. I don't know how you feel about this, but one of our kind of philosophies is there's two kinds of, you're hiring for two things. You're either hiring for potential or you're hiring for experience, right? Potential's cheaper, but the ROI is 12, 18, 24 months before you see a return on investment, right? Because you have to have training, you have to have mentoring, you have to have time and patience. Experience costs more money, but the ROI is almost immediate.
Right.
When you get into problems, it's when you pay for potential, but expect the ROI of experience. And that's where we get into this turnstile of, well, we thought they were going to do great, or they started off great and they tapered off, or man, that was just the wrong fit, or whatever it is.
Number one issue I see is we always hire for potential. And the other component I'll add on to that is we think we can train and develop them.
But we don't have a training plan.
Well, we don't have a training plan, but we'll give them a training plan. Let's assume I can come up with this amazing training plan. Do we have the bandwidth, the resources, and the capacity to train this individual that's 12, 24, 36 months behind where I need them to be?
Yep.
And expect them to be there in the next 6. And it's not a testament to the individual. We have to recognize the vast majority of companies I will advise and coach and suggest. I know it's more expensive to pay for experience, but you don't have the capacity and bandwidth to be investing 10, 20, 30, 40% of your day or your week or your month in the development of your talent when you need to grow your business. You need to focus on your clients, your investors, your strategy, your financial components of your business. I'm not saying training and development is critically important, and there's a time and place when you get to a good scale to do that. But generally, sub 50-person companies, I strongly advise them to consider pay for the experienced talent and then supplement over time some developmental roles. But don't overdo it. It usually is the other way around. We see 20, 30, 40, 60% developmental roles and the company's not moving at all.
Yep, that's the battle I fight on a daily basis is exactly that. And it's funny once you get someone over the hump to say, so there's a couple caveats here. Most business owners have gone out and hired a high ticket person and got burned by it because it was a friend of a friend who came through a referral who needed a job and they said they could do it. And then they get 6 months in and they're like, they don't understand the business. They're kind of out of their depth. Again, it's just the three biggest hiring mistakes are we don't clearly understand our needs. We put together an ad hoc hiring process and we hire for current revenues instead of future revenues. And so when we do this, going back to a business owner saying, I understand you've been burned one time, but you probably didn't do it correctly. And, you and I can offer them a process that is the probabilities of it working out are a lot greater. And then when we do it and people get people in and they're like, oh shit, why didn't I do this 2 years ago? Like, life is good. I have time. They're capable. I trust them. Things are getting better. But it's not just, snap your fingers and hire a big ticket person, a person with big ticket experience and expect it. You still have to create a process to maximize the probability of that being the right fit for you.
For sure. And I think the other component of that is you have to truly understand what are your needs and not the job description needs to check the box, check. Yeah. It's what are the soft skills? What are the leadership skills? What are those components? And are they aligned on your mission, vision, values? And I don't mean, do they believe in them? Is that who they are?
Yeah.
So an example I'll give is even in my own company, one of the things I've learned in my organization over the last 4 or 5 years that we spent a lot of time digging into is we've recognized we are what I call the non-HR HR folks.
Right.
We approach it from the business, the strategy of the business, understanding the business first before the people, and we integrate the two together.
Yep.
But that's a really challenging skill to find in an interview that doesn't match up to quote unquote a simple question. Check the box. They answered the question. I need that person that's truly that non-HR HR person that understands the business and HR together. And I will tell leaders, as you can really dig in and understand who you are beyond the check marks, and you do need those checks to ensure they have the right competencies, skills, and backgrounds, but look for those other components to ensure that they really have what the company needs, as you said, today, but 1, 2, 3, 5 years out, and say, I'm willing to pay for that because they'll get us there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some mistakes that you've encountered, and maybe I'll throw a couple in myself just for fun, but some mistakes you've seen business owners make when it comes to kind of assessing their team or being able to tell who on their team doesn't have the ability or the capacity to help them scale. Sure. And even when it comes to timelines around switching people out.
So I think the first biggest mistake is over elevating people too quickly, too fast, and or too many titles up. The reality is the best thing you could do is put the person in the role they belong in, let them stay in that role, define key competencies or KPIs to achieve those levels of success. And if you base it on what's critical to the business, which is the metrics, whatever metrics you assess it to be, you'll help create more objectivity than subjectivity.
Right.
So building onto that, the second mistake I see is subjectivity. And usually it's the early stage startups, growing companies that have brought their friends, families, college buddies, whomever it is, that have some competencies and skills in those areas, and they struggle to make the objective, keyword objective, decision of who is the right person for that role and
Right.
is that individual. And candidly, look, I've had to make those decisions multiple times in my career for other organizations and even for my own. And I have to tell you, as a person, it is the hardest thing to end a relationship with somebody you've worked with for 2, 3 years, 4 years. They put in all their blood, sweat, tears, hours, travel. You've done nights, weekends, holidays, Sunday evenings. You've done crazy agendas and travel and whatever it may be, but they're not the right person. They're not the right fit. They're not the right skill. And being that leader to sit back and assess and evaluate is exceptionally hard to do.
Yep.
And some other challenges we see is we love giving people equity opportunities to have shares, ownership interest. When you do that, you need to consider what happens if you need to exit that individual. That's another mistake we see is people don't want to exit them because now they have ownership in my company. And what does that mean? What happens to them in the future? Do I accelerate it? All those challenges related to that's another large challenge that we see. And then I would probably say the last challenge that I continue to see is not finding the right talent when they need that talent. As you said, or kind of what we talked about a little while ago was they're going to find somebody that is developmental that we think can get them there. And the reality is they're not. And the longer the time goes by, the longer we see that the person's good, but they're not what they need to accelerate their growth, the demands, the challenges, the systems, the processes, and the revenue to get the company to the next level. And you can't hope and pray. As I say, prayers are good, hope's great, but it's not a strategy.
Correct. Yeah. I know what you're saying. And the worst thing that can happen, though, is a business owner takes a long shot on someone's son, daughter, niece, nephew, whatever, and they come in and they're great. And that 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 chance it works out, right? The opportunity for that to be, the probability of that being successful is very low. Like hiring someone random with no skills and have them just pick it up and go gangbusters, it happens, but the probabilities on that are low. And if it happens for someone, they consciously or unconsciously, they make that their hiring strategy. Well, look at so-and-so, they're amazing. Right. So let's just hire young, energetic people. And next thing you know, you got a bunch of young, energetic people who don't have a clue what they're doing, right? And now we gotta flip the script. And then the other side of that is you only know what you know. Right. And if your team you've had, it's your first business and the team you had is the only team you have, you think the best person on that team is the best person. Mm-hmm. And then when you work with someone like us and we say, okay, we're going to bring in some capacity and experience and someone who is dynamic and fits the culture, it reframes that business owner's way they think about what good is. And right. I've actually asked my clients this before. I said, after we hired so-and-so, did it change your definition of what a good leader is in your company? And they're like, hell yeah. Right? Like I used to think I had a bunch of good leaders. Now I know, because then it makes them go back and they become these, what we call in our lexicon, the curious business owner saying, they go from that unsure, like, do I need a new leader? What we're talking about today. And then once you put someone in there, now they become curious and they're saying, I wonder if so-and-so is really doing that great a job. And then they call us back like you, and they say, what do you think of so-and-so? Can you assess them? Do you think they're doing a good job? And if you spend any time in the business, you could probably answer that pretty quickly and say, yeah, they're probably not great. You could probably do better, but we don't want to put people out on the street either. So let's talk about how we can transition them or help them or maybe move them into a different department or see if they're open to mentorship so we can bring someone in above them who can, so if they ever do want to leave the company, they're going to take some real skills with them, whatever that is, right? So it's it's a sticky mess when you get into this kind of assessment of your, especially if you're a second gen owner and you inherit some legacy employees.
Wow. Corey, something I was thinking about as we're talking through this is the other opportunity I see is follow your gut and follow the red flags. So I'll go to the legacy employees. How many times have you asked a business owner, if I ask you to honestly, critically be real with yourself and think back to the first red flag you had with whomever that person was, X, and ask yourself, how long have you known or believed you've known they weren't the right fit for the role? If you assess and evaluate, you'd be surprised. It goes back months. I've had it go back years.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, you've kept this person in this role for 2, 3, 4 years, and you knew they were not the right fit.
Yeah.
You thought they weren't the right fit. It's bad on you as a leader to let that continue to go on. And it's hard. It's very, very difficult to have those conversations. But I have to tell you, if you're honest and objective with yourself, and I'd ask any leader listening or watching today, think about the one person in your team that you know or you believe you know might not be the right fit, and ask yourself to really go back and think about the first time you thought that. It's probably 6 months to 3 years or longer.
Well, I've talked to people who they're a second gen owner and they know they have a problem, but their parent, their mom and their dad was running that business for 40 years before, and the person was the 5th person they ever hired.
Right.
And they've been there for 40 years and they are the constraint. We don't do that here. I don't desire to learn new technology. I don't want to change how we do things. All this new technology scares me. Why can't it just be the way it used to be, right? And they are the constraint. They are the toxin that can spread through the organization. But there's this incredible sense of loyalty to, well, man, my dad hired that guy 20 years ago, and they're friends with our family.
They come to the family holiday events.
Yeah, what do I do, right? And that's a whole different discussion. But it's not misplaced. Right. I can't emphasize this enough. We always say, small business owners are good people working their asses off. They have a ton of responsibility to take care of the people that work for them. And so this is counter to everything they believe, because they're there to create a good business and create a workplace where people can thrive, take care of their families, right? And people can be happy and live that consistent life. And then they have to turn around and say, oh yeah, this person who's been here forever, I think I need to get rid of them. And it feels really cold-blooded. And like you keep saying, if you look at unbiased and objectively, if you're trying to make your business better, it's a good business decision, but it's a really shitty personal decision.
It is, but you know what? If it's the decision you don't want to make and you need to make it, then let's find a solution, because there is a solution. You might have to reposition the role. You might have to take a bit of a financial countermeasure to offset it. There's ways to do it, but what you don't want to do is leave them in a high influence, high capacity, high leadership role that is actually negatively impacting your business. Right. Let's find them a seat that is suitable for the competencies and skills and give them the best we can. But don't leave them in that senior leadership level, leading a team of people that is directly negatively impacting you and your business and your team.
Right. And my wife is a much smarter person than me. And she always says, clear is kind. I think she got that from like Lean In or whatever. But, clear is kind, and people want leadership and direction. We always talk to our clients kind of about, we have 3 options, right? You can go talk to this person about some mentorship. Let them know we need to bring someone in over you. Are you open to learning?
Right.
Or you can say, hey, we're bringing someone in over you because we need to move this forward. Mm-hmm. We would like to keep you. Is there another area of the business, or we think this area of the business might be really good for you? Let's transition you into a new area so you can learn some more and still be involved. Or if you want to leave, like, let me help you do that, right? So we'll give you all the time you need. We'll be your reference. I'll call all my contacts. Whatever you need me to do to help you do that, we'll do it.
Right.
Unfortunately, if they pick option A or B, the majority of the time, you end up jumping over option C and terminating them because they say, yeah, I'm open to it, or I'll go to another department. They get a little butthurt. They never get over it. They turn a little toxic. Then they really start standing out in ways. And you've got the strength where you move them to a different department. So you already have some strength there. You brought someone in over them. So you already have the strength there. Now they're really in this flex role where they are a little more expendable.
Right.
And now the relationship turns a little sour and you end up saying, I got to get rid of, how many times as a business owner, after you've gone through this exercise, 6 weeks later, they call you and you're like, I just got to get rid of them. I got to get rid of them. We got to do something. They got to go. They're doing all these things. And then that's where you're kind of like, I kind of gave you a heads up on this because after 10, 12, 15, 20 years of working somewhere, this is a really hard pill for them to swallow. And all we can do is what we can do, right? We can act with kindness and generosity throughout the process and try to help them and give them all the options we can. And we hope they take them.
Sure.
But sometimes they just don't, and it gets ugly and it sucks.
And that's where you just need to take a good partner, because the reality is you can't control people's reactions.
You can only control what you do. Yeah.
Yep. And you support them where they are, and you do the best you can to support them in that journey, whatever that may look like for them. But recognize that, look, a demotion, a lateral move that you have not chose, any of those are not well received by most. I don't know the numbers, but I'm going to tell you this.
It's low.
Not seen very many people that take a lower level role or less responsibility or adjusted titles and stay in those roles for extended period of times. There are some exceptions, but not generally.
But we owe it to them to offer it. But all we can do is let our owners know that there's a high there's a mid-range to mid-high probability here. We're going to get to the point where it's not going to be super comfortable and it's not going to go the way we were hoping.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some advice. So you always like to talk, Neil, give a business owner. So if they're trying to assess their team, what are the 3 to 5 pieces of advice or things they should be looking for in their leadership team that might indicate to them, bing, maybe I need to upgrade, or maybe I need a shuffle here, or maybe I need some more experience or capacity on my team?
I think the first bit of advice is be objective. When you're evaluating your team, I would take the names out. If you were just evaluating the roles without a name, how can you objectively evaluate and ask yourself, is that role achieving the functions I need today and at least the next 24 months ahead? Forget the name. It's not Corey. Is this role, a podcast host, effective now? Are they achieving great success in 2 years from now? If I have 100,000 listeners, is this role going to be effective the way it is?
Well, it's obvious you're going to need to replace that guy.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We'll work on that later. But I will tell you, objectivity is easier said than done. And names out is one of the best things. I think the other thing you have to recognize is, what is the organizational goals? What are you trying to achieve? And recognize that maybe you don't have to replace the person, but you need to split the functions up. Sometimes it's the scope of the functions just too large.
Yeah, they might be good at one thing, but you have them doing 3 things, and 2 of them are just either they don't like it, they don't know it, they don't want to know it, or it's just, I always call it breaking their neck too. You have them doing 3 functions, but none of them are aligned. They're all kind of at different degrees. And so they always have to stop and refocus and do this. Then they get interrupted. So the performance in all 3 areas suffer just because they're not aligned.
Yeah, I think the third thing is look at the talents you have and ask and really discover with the talent, what is their plan and their growth strategy? What are they looking for? You'd be surprised how many people were hired into a role because that was their background. But as you look at the competencies and skills, you will find some exceptional, magical talent that's in the wrong seat.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And when you can assign them and align them to the right role, the right seat, the right place, they will overly exceed your expectations.
Yeah.
I think additional advice I'd give to founders, leaders, is if you're not networking today, for future leaders to join your company, you're behind. You should be looking and exploring and evaluating and talking with folks that could be in your leadership team 1 to 2 to 3 years down the road,
Right.
and building those connections and partnerships now, because when you're ready, they might not be the one to come in, but now you have somebody at that skill and competency level, and good leaders know good leaders. And I've reached out to people and said, look, I have this opportunity. Do you know somebody for it? And I'm going to tell you probably 50-50, 60-40. They're like, what about me? I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. Granted, I had, but I didn't want to tell them.
It's the soft touch. The soft touch, yeah.
It's the soft touch, and if not, they're going to go, oh my gosh, Neil, I got these 3 people that would be awesome for this. Let me reach out on your behalf. And next thing you know, you have a network. If you're waiting to fill a role to the time the role is needed, you're behind. And there's no reason to be behind. And then the last thing is, I think the most important thing, just from a leadership perspective, is get to know your talent and your team, just as a person, but as an employee as well. What are the motivators? What are the drivers? What are the things that work for them? Sometimes if you can reposition some things, give them some additional resources. I will tell you, one of the things I've seen in a few of the companies we work with is executive coaching. These companies have invested in executive coaching for this talent, one-on-one dedicated resource to help them in their leadership journey. And we've seen some miraculous growth in these individuals, because what they really need is just a little bit of time and attention from one dedicated person focused solely on their leadership journey, some of the barriers they were facing, and their growth that we've seen in 6 to 12 months was amazing.
Love it. Those are all great points. They're all valuable, and people should listen to that. Again, it's a hard topic, and it's probably, well, I say it all the time, bar none, there's no harder decision a business owner will ever make than going to a long-term legacy employee who, like you said earlier, gave them blood, sweat, and tears, weekends, time away from family, and saying, hey, thank you for everything you've done for getting me here, but I don't think you can get me there. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And so on that note, if someone's thinking, man, Neil, I should reach out to you because I feel like I'm in that situation, how can we get in touch with you, Neil?
Corey, 2 best ways to reach out to me is you're welcome to find me online on my company website, exceptionalhrsolutions.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn or my LinkedIn page for same Exceptional HR Solutions. Either one, reach out, drop me a note. Always willing to chat, connect, talk with, help, have a brainstorming session with our leaders, really helping them on their journey to help them get through these challenging, difficult times.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, man. Thank you. Valuable conversation. This could spin off into about 100 different conversations. So I've enjoyed it. I mean, you and I think are really working in that same space, right? That struggling small business owner who's like, man, why won't it just come together, right? We kind of call it the wheels have fallen off the machine, sitting there scratching their head, looking at the business, and all 4 tires are on the ground, and they're thinking, I don't even know where to start to fix this thing and get this thing back on the road, right? And so if that sounds like you, give Neil a call, and he can help sort you out. So thanks so much, man. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Corey, appreciate you very much, and thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing the conversation in the future.
Yeah, let's keep in touch.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Neil. There you go. Neil Katz. Awesome conversation. Smart guy. So I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. If you got value out of today's episode, you want to keep up to date on our new content, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know if there's any topics you want us to discuss. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can find us on Apple or Spotify. Just search up the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'm Corey Harlock, and until next time, stop grinding, start growing.